62% of firearm deaths are suicides. Now, why do we want to keep guns away? If you're going to commit suicide, just do it, right? But when you have a gun, there is no moment to pause. You try poison, you try other methods, a knife. You usually have a little bit of time to double think it. With the gun, it's over with. Again, we want to keep guns away in a home for preventing suicides. Children. 7 children a day are killed, not wounded, killed on an average with a gun. Children and teens.
Say how many suicides there are in the day.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Over 20,000.
20.
Yeah, you said 20 now.
Okay, I said 12. Those are the homicides. I didn't say the number of suicides. About 22,000 suicides a year, in addition to the other numbers. Suicide sometimes is not included in the numbers for gun deaths, especially with, another thing is domestic violence. An average month in the United States, 50 women are shot to death by intimate partners. This does not include dating partners. A number of women are injured or killed by dating partners, but this is only for married or if they have children together. The presence of a gun in a domestic violence situation increases the risk of the woman being shot and killed by 5 times, which is a huge number. Men of color are 14 times more likely to be shot and killed with guns. This is a complicated problem. Mothers Demand Action was founded by a woman named Sharon Watts out in Indianapolis, Indiana. She founded it on Facebook shortly after the Sandy Hook event back in 2012, I think it was, yes. The purpose was to reduce gun violence and to increase public safety measures, because at this time it's starting to have more and more deaths. Moms was organized basically on a state basis. We have a Michigan chapter. Each state has its own chapter, and then it comes down to the local level. After Sandy Hook, the federal government did nothing in terms of gun safety after that incident. Because of the seemingly lack of concern on the federal level, Moms works a lot on the state level, including obviously Michigan, which we'll talk about in a minute. We do both education, trying to tell people about the gun problem and what we can do about it. We are very active also in the legislative arena. Going back to education, again, our purpose is to have gun safety. We concentrate a lot about guns in the home. We have an excellent program, which you can find out more about at the end by our table, wherein it's called Be Smart, which is for the adults in how to keep gun safety away for children in the home. It's an excellent program. Are there any teachers or members of PTA here? Parent Teachers Organization? If anyone is, it really is a good presentation for schools and parents. Again, it's not geared to the children per se, but to the parents who are in charge of the children. Or grandparents. Very good, very good. I think we've all heard of the number of, anyway, there's a number of children killed in the home, and what we determine is unintentional shootings, meaning it could have been prevented. Children are killed because guns are left out, the safe is not locked, the gun's under the bed, fully loaded, And what's the one thing children will find is what you don't want them to find. Yes, sir.
Third leading cause of death for children 18 and under is firearms. And you can excuse that any way you want. Well, like suicide or anything, you can't excuse children being killed.
And it's a simple thing of just putting the gun away in a locked safe, or disarming the gun. Yes, thank you. Again, we work with the legislation, and that's one of the main reasons we are here tonight, to let you know about some of the bills that are being processed by our Michigan legislature. Recently, and Linda will go into more detail, we've had bills 584, 586, which will let guns in schools. It will also unenable so that the schools do not have any say in the decision. Right now, a number of schools in our area have signs, no weapons. Well, if Bill 586 passes, they have to take those signs down because they will not be able to stop guns in school legally. They will be fined according to this proposed law. Linda will talk more about it, but we were up there, short notice, they're fast tracking these bills. Monday, we hear that it's going to be in committee. Tuesday, we were out there for the public hearing. What they had to be like a lot of people saying we don't want it. A lot of people from the Michigan Superintendent's Boards, the PTAs, hospital boards, law enforcement, schools, right? Even the trainers, firearm trainer was there saying this is the worst thing you can have because of the chaos. How many of you have grandchildren or children that have been through lockdowns? Okay, and I'll bet you they've been traumatized. Am I assuming correctly? I know they just had one in Mattawan last week, and we heard the lady talking about the trauma for children. I'm sure it's across the board. So, somebody asked, how do we fight the NRA? And we have to, the word I use is erosion. We just have to keep at it when bills come up because they do support these. They're often behind these bills by a variety of ways. But we lobby, Moms Demand Action, lobby against the bills. We have a paid lobbyist that informs us as to what's going on. Another important thing I need to mention is our relationship. We are part of a network with a place called, or a group called Everytown. Have you heard of that? Has anybody heard of Everytown? All right, they have an excellent website, a lot of information, and again, that is not just our partner, but basically we're tied together. It's almost one group. We're the soldiers on the ground, Moms Demand Action, whereas Everytown is often the commander. So they will let us know when a bill is coming up, things we can do. We're heavy into calling our legislatures, meeting for coffees, and trying to put the pressure on. And sometimes it's a lost cause, believe it or not. I mean, I've got to be open about it. I was shocked how they don't listen, especially when we found out a lot of school superintendents had called this local state senator and the committee and got nowhere. Even from the professionals, they would not listen to their opinions on the chaos guns in schools would produce.
I'm Linda MacDonald, and I could wear two shirts, but there's only one of me, so I only put one on. I also wear a shirt for the Coalition for Common Ground, which was founded shortly after Sandy Hook. And Moms came about 2 years ago, just before the Uber shooting. So the Uber shooting will be 2 years old this coming February. That was my first engagement with gun violence in a visceral way, was the Uber shooting. I've been engaged in trying to keep people from killing themselves with atomic weapons for a long time. I'm an old person. I'm 72. I started working on stuff related to nuclear weapons back when my kids were like not quite born yet, you know? And so I realized that what's going on now is like kind of a nuclear war every day. with 93 people dying somewhere in the United States. We get all excited about the 26 at the church, and rightly so, and the 58 in Las Vegas. But the daily death and dismemberment of communities is tearing our nation apart. Individual families and whole communities. And that we are not doing anything to stop it, and in fact, in our state and other states, writing legislation that makes it worse is nothing short of criminal and immoral. Now, I got a mom shirt on. I'm talking as a human being to you all right now, okay? And so I want to talk a little bit about the legislation, but I want to urge you in the strongest way to pick up the orange sheet that's in the back, because it has information on it, and some of the other sheets that are there that interpret these bills that were introduced in the Senate in September 20th. September 20th. And then were fast-tracked through the Senate by Mr. Meekhoff, who wrote the bills, had them written, and passed them through the Senate very fast. Within 10 days, really. I mean, November 8th they passed. He tried to sneak them through the Judiciary Committee of the Senate, and they refused to let him do that. You know why he wanted to do that? Because he didn't have to give notice. If he could force the Judiciary Committee to take over the hearing, he would not have to give an 18-hour notice, and he wanted to do it as fast as he could. This is a good Christian man. He'll tell you that. I don't believe it. At any rate, the bills went through the Senate straight down the line. All the Republicans voted for it except for one, Marty Nolenberg in Macomb County. And every senator, I kid you not, every senator voted for it. Our local senator in District 20, which is Kalamazoo County, voted for a couple of amendments, easy votes. She knew they would fail, and they did fail on a party line vote. And then she voted for the bills. So don't let any article in the newspaper confuse you about what she voted.
While she was getting calls from school leaders to
Right.
not vote for it.
Exactly.
While she
The
was out.
pressure was really on. And I think that was why she waited to announce her candidacy. But she did that the next day. She proved her bona fides to the people who were going to support her to win election. So what are these bills? 584, Senate Bill 584, and that's what it's called in the House, SB 584, would allow concealed carry in all of the places where open carry can now be done. Unfortunately, in Michigan, beginning in 2001, the erosion of real gun safety legislation began. That's how legislation is done. It gets amended. The old laws get amended, and the new laws are put into effect. And so what happened back in 2001 was that for open carry, you could open carry anywhere in Michigan, including what is called sensitive areas, including schools, including hospitals, including churches, daycare centers, you name it. If you want to carry your gun on your hip or on your shoulder, college campuses, in the state capitol, in a meeting of your county commission or whatever, you can do that. I can't carry a sign into the capitol, but somebody can carry a gun. And they regularly hold open carry events at the state capitol, and the Michigan State Police are all around, but all these mostly men, white men mostly, walking around with either guns on their shoulders or attached to their hip. So anyway, 584 supposedly closes what has been called the open carry loophole in the state, because don't you know, if you open carry, you scare the bejeebers out of people. and you cause the schools to lock down. Let's close that loophole and let everybody carry concealed. And then you wouldn't know who the heck has the damn gun. Right? So what does the school have to do? Or anybody else? They have to have extra security. You have to figure out, is this person, does everybody have to go through a metal detector? That's happening in some places. Should we have to go through metal detectors to go into our child's school?
How would a metal detector stop it if they illegally go in anyway?
No kidding. But who's going to do the checking? We were at a school board meeting the other night, and they were talking about when we're saving money on our electricity because we're doing this, this, and this. It's all good for the school. And I'm thinking to myself, they'll have to take their savings and turn it into security. That was one of the amendments that failed. One amendment was, let's pay for security. Forget that. Anyway, that's what 584 does. It actually lets people carry concealed. Yes, you have to have a little more training. How much training do you have to have now to
2
carry
hours.
concealed? How
2
much?
hours in the classroom. Sit and going to the range.
Well, yeah, but it's 8 hours total, kind of, is what I've heard. 2
I-
hours in a classroom and 94,000 bullets fired. I mean, and the upgrade to allow you to have a little sticker on your concealed carry permit that you can go into a sensitive area is like shoots 94,000 more bullets. Oh, only 94 bullets. That's a lot of bullets anyway, but not enough training. And that was one of the things that one of the speakers talked about at the hearing. Not enough training, not enough training. Why in the world would you do that? So 584 is a mess. 585 has to do with convicting people and sending them quicker to jail if they do anything with their gun. And then 586 is taking away the option of any policy-making board like a school. Take that away from them. Turn them into the equivalent of a township, a county, city government. None of us now, because of preemption on other bills, can enact our own legislation where firearms are concerned. We cannot enact our own policies. The people who believe in so-called local government, in this case, do not want local government.
And do you know why that was done?
Well, I mean, what do I
It is an ongoing lobbying effort by the NRA because it's easier to lobby and campaign against concentrated larger areas like state capitals, federal governments, than it is a whole
bunch of
network
places,
small
yeah.
governments.
Well, I mean, I think that's a tactic, and they're winning on that one. So, anyway, that would happen here. As far as I am concerned personally as a citizen, the laws that have been enacted ought to be repealed and decent laws put in their place. But what we're trying to do now is stop these 3 laws from being voted positively in the House, so we killed them in the House. We didn't have time to do that. We're working really hard to get the word out for people to contact their local representative. Now, if you live in John Hoadley's district, you need to call him and say, thank you, but we need you to keep the Democrats opposed to these bills. There will be Democrats that will vote for these bills. They'll vote for them because of the so-called training added to it and that it's still permitted. Okay, it's still a permit required. We need every Democrat to vote against it, and we've got to get a bunch of Republicans to vote against it. And there were a lot who voted against the bills 4416. There was a whole package of permitless carry bills that passed June the 7th, and there were a number of Republicans that voted against that. So, but our legislators did not. David Maturin was the only one. So he's on our list, but for you to call David Maturin and say, thank you for your vote in June, but we need you to oppose these bills that will come to you eventually, unless they die in the committee, which I highly doubt. And Mr. Iden needs to hear from you, and Ms. Beth Griffin, who is in, she's really in Van Buren County, but she has a little tail of folks in the north of this county, a lovely gerrymandered district, and you need to be in touch with her. you know, when they're voting on legislation like this, you have every right as a citizen not to just stick with your own legislator. You have the right to talk to any legislator. And you are the best lobbyist for what we need to have happen on these bills. The other thing that went through, and Rick is going to give a little program here in a minute, one of the safe things that is talked about in the program that Rick is giving is that nobody under the age of 21 should be allowed to carry a weapon, concealed or otherwise, legally, okay? There are a lot of people who do things illegally, but through law. The Senate, on the same day they passed these awful bills, also passed Senate Bill 366. And they sent that to the House, and that's also in the Judiciary Committee, and that would allow 18-year-olds to carry concealed weapons as a, you know, so there's a little bitty note on that, on this piece. We're not even talking about the federal legislation, which is really rotten. There are two bills that are going along, and maybe we'll get to come back and talk about that later. But if you sign up, now one thing you can do to stay in the know is get out your phones and do 64433 and the word ready. And then you'll be automatically entered into the mom's network. And eventually you'll start to get text messages that say, push this button and you can call so-and-so. This is really important, everybody. I heard Kobe Roberts the other day say, it must have been last Wednesday, she said, people who don't want this kind of legislation can't just sit around wringing their hands and crying and complaining. She said, she used the bad word, NRA, but we say corporate gun lobby, because that's what they are. They have organized, she's right, for 40 years. They have got money, she's right. They got people giving them money right and left, big money bags, and they have gotten their legislators. And we have to do some of that ourselves. We don't have to be nasty about it. We just have to change the conversation and get on our own marching boots and not be distracted by too much other stuff like people tweeting all over the place. So, anyway, this is important. It's important you sign up in the back on the mom's sign-up sheet. You will eventually hear from us. 20,000 people have signed up in the last 2 weeks, and we're having trouble calling everybody and say, hey, welcome, you know. So if you take the initiative, then you can already be involved. It took me a long time to get a call, but I didn't wait. I went straight ahead. Okay. Final thing I want to say. Rick mentioned it. We have several events every year. One of our main events is June the 2nd, during the big Baldy-Roll in the park, you know, and we have a Gun Violence Awareness Day. It's national, and we participate in that. Coalition participates. We participate often at the corner of Academy Street and Park at the First Methodist Church. So put that on your calendar. Don't forget. The other thing is we've got an event coming up. We're revving our wheels up on December 18th. Don't you want to have a party? December 18th at Bell's Brewery in the back room. We're raising money, gathering food for Loaves and Fishes, among others. And if you sign up and give us an email address, we'll be able to keep you in the loop about that. And you're welcome to come that night. And maybe, if we've been strong, we will have defeated these awful bills in the House. And so we'll celebrate. And if we haven't, if we know they're going to the governor, we'll be polishing our boots and putting on our flak jackets, because we've got to really work on this thing and get him to veto these bills, right? So you have a chance to come and help us raise money and food for Loaves and Fishes, hear a little bit about what's going on, sign up to be in the movement for gun violence prevention.
And everybody said, hooray! Right? Come on, hooray! Please, the gentleman was absolutely correct when he said that, for example, the NRA is working at the top level. The MOMS is committed to working on the local level.
Right.
We kindly ask you to sign our sheet in the back. We don't ask you for money. We
Although you
don't-
can give it
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
want.
right. We'll let you out of the building. We also have a Facebook page which gives information and a email address if you have a question. So kindly, there's a signature sheet where Michelle is sitting. If you sign that with your email and cell phone, we can keep you in the loop as to what is happening. For example, last week, we were told on Facebook, if you can, get to Lansing on Tuesday in front of the committee that was reviewing 584 and 586. Also, come to the Senate because they're going to be voting and they want to see the local, those that are opposed, hence our red shirts, you'll see in a lot of pictures. So anyway, please sign up over there. Not that we just want you to be in the loop because the local level is so important now. And I've got to mention, voters, not politicians. I think that, yep, good, there she's got one. Because to change these districts has to be done. Because things will continue as they are unless we get new people in the legislature.
Because I just want you to know, the question was asked, what are we doing and what are the causes that moms demand action? What are the actions we're involved in, and some other groups? So we've talked lately a lot about what are background checks. So I just want to go through real quickly what the background check system is, because you'll hear some stuff about it. And there was just a proposal, a bipartisan proposal, to improve the background check systems at the federal level today. John Cornyn, I have all the suspects in the picture so you can see them. But this is the process in buying a gun. You fill out a form of 16 questions. You're supposed to be honest about those things about yourself, drug use, criminal history. The store staff contacts NICS online. NICS is the National Instant Criminal Check System. Thank you. You'll hear NICS mentioned by gun owners, NRA owners, corporate gun lobby, and by people that are in gun violence prevention, because that's what Moms Demand Action does. It's not gun control. That's played out to be something negative, and we are positive about what we want, which is gun violence prevention, as Phyllis said, safety. So anyways, they go through this process, they call up the NICS staff in, I think it's Washington, D.C., give your social security number. Go ahead. You can do the next slide. We're not connected, sorry. Okay. They have 3 days to decide. They get the information, they check their database, and that's been talked a lot about since Sutherland Springs, and I think even the one in California the other day. And that system will decide whether you are allowed to have a gun, and they decide pretty quickly, they have to. But they do have a way to delay it, but they only have 3 days to notify the gun shop, the gun dealer where you're buying it from, a federal gun dealer, as to whether you pass that check or not. If not, the store can sell it to that person. Okay. This is the process. I hope you can see it in the back. But you can see out of 100 attempted purchases, 66 of them go through. No problem, the check is done. The other 34 at the bottom, going down, are transferred to NICS, to their section, where they look at it a little more deeply. Out of those 34, 25 of them are okayed after a second look. 9 of them are delayed to get additional information. So when you're on that 3-day deadline, most people can get a gun. It depends on the dealer whether they sell it after 3 days without the okay on these delays. But out of those ones that were delayed, 1.1 of those on average are denied after further look. The other ones, 7.98 of them are sold, and some of those shouldn't have been sold. And we've heard about some of those cases in the news lately. Go ahead. Right now, these are the suspects I talked about, and you can see these are Democrats and Republicans, and there is a bill to improve the system. I won't go into details, but we've heard about the Sutherland, Texas shooter. He should have had data entered by the Air Force and didn't. So they're proposing to improve that system and the way states put information in. So that's a good bill. Another problem we have with our gun laws is there's a boyfriend loophole. I think somebody, Phyllis, referenced it. That right now, dating partners on federal gun purchases, dating partners who are convicted of domestic abuse are not restricted for buying guns. You can see 3 situations there where somebody convicted of a misdemeanor for assaulting his girlfriend because they weren't living together, didn't have children together, and were living together, they can pass a background check, a federal background check on that NICS system. Also, if they were a convicted stalker. And particularly in Michigan, if you have a temporary restraining order, you can still purchase a gun. And most judges, when there's a domestic violence issue, they first only issue temporary restraining orders in Michigan. I have a homework assignment for you. I couldn't get to it on this system because we're not on the internet. Go home, watch Samantha Bee. Just lost the name of the show, Full Frontal, thank you. She has, I think, November 1st, an episode called Close the Boyfriend Loophole. And she says it a lot better than I can in a lot more colorful language. It's very effective. It will entertain you and also will disgust you. Okay, next slide. These are the things we can do to close that boyfriend loophole in the federal gun prohibitions, that stalkers and dating partners are barred from gun ownership, just like dangerous abusers that were spouses or ex-spouses. Part of the changes in that proposed law, the different senators that I put up there, they are talking about domestic abusers being restricted from the NICS system, being able to buy a gun. But there's a problem in getting that data in there. So that's what they're trying to improve. The last one I think is the most interesting. In most states where you can't get a gun, you're prohibited, and then you have a disqualifying factor and a judge orders that you have to give up those guns, it's on your own volition to turn those in. Police in most states, including Michigan, don't go and get them. They're not required. They would want to. When you talk to police officers, they would like to. They know when they leave that house that it's not a good thing because there's a gun there, but they cannot take them. If you want to know more about the subject, I'm just going to show you a couple graphics from this article. This is from the New York Times, November 6th. It's by Nicholas Kristof, and it's an op-ed. I call it Truth because it does tell a lot of the things we can do. Next slide. These are the things that you'll find any gun violence prevention organization working on. Moms Demand Action is very selective in the kinds of things they pick for action work. They're really focusing, like Phyllis said, on the state level right now. But these are the things at the federal level, and there are some state issues in here. Let me get my slide. The background checks we talked about, safe storage of guns, the Be Smart program, things like that. Brady Campaign has their own program called ASK. End immunity, the issue of being able to sue gun makers. And right now, the Sandy Hook parents are on an appeal. They were allowed to get a second appeal on suing the gun manufacturers with the AR-15 that he used. Protection orders to tighten up that system and allow protection orders that take guns away from people that are domestic abusers or at risk for suicide. They are effective laws that can change gun violence before it happens, and that's what we need to focus on. Straw purchases, I think you're aware of those, especially in Chicago. Did you know in Las Vegas, with that law they have with no background checks, the law that the Attorney General won't enforce, all those guns, many of those guns after those gun shows go to California, Southern California, and they have a surge in gun crime after those gun shows in Las Vegas. And it's been proven, there's a couple of research articles on that. Banning bump stocks, which seems to be forgotten. They're talking about it again, but I don't think it's gonna happen. They're gonna Sandy Hook the whole thing. They won't make anything
There
happen.
is good news though about the bump stocks,
Go ahead, Gene.
and that is bump stocks. The company that makes them campaigned hard saying, these are not firearms, and they're not covered under firearms legislation. So the immunity doesn't apply to them, so they can be sued.
Can you just explain what a bump stock is for people who are unfamiliar?
Just think to put that and make it automatic.
Somebody explain it better than I can?
Bump stock is a device you put on the back end of your rifle, and the recoil to rifle causes it to pull the trigger again. So it turns it de facto into a machine gun. Now, you'll have some sort of gun nut say technically it's not a machine gun. You can call it anything you want. When it fires 4 rounds per second and you have to do nothing more than hold it, it's a machine gun.
It's what the Las Vegas shooter used. Right? He had several of them lined up. You lose accuracy too, I understand.
When you're shooting at
Of course, you're shooting at a real crowd, don't make a lot
But
of
I did not
difference.
know that about the immunity. That's very interesting. Thank you. Yeah, we're not experts. We learned all this because we got angry. Ban under 21s, Linda mentioned this. She had to go, but I'm glad she brought it up. We just passed a law to allow 18-year-olds, and no one's quite sure what it means to those 3 laws, 584, 585, and 586. I don't think 18-year-olds can carry in a school or on a campus. They might be able to be restricted by the schools, but no one's quite sure. Ammunition checks, I've not seen this one before. It's talking about the first time you buy ammunition, that you have to go through a background check, an updated one. I don't think you have to do it every time you buy ammunition. And then research smart guns. There's a lot of good technology out there, and there's a lot of talk from the corporate gun lobby that it's not accurate, it's going to make you not be able to get your gun fast enough to defend yourself. All kinds of preposterous stuff, but there's a lot of promising technology. Okay. So what's happened over the past, I think this is from 91 to now, the top one, if you can't see it from the back, those are the concealed carry states in red. And in 91, there was a big gap, states that did not allow concealed carry, and now it's everywhere. In terms of open carry, in 91, not every state did, not every state does. And like Linda said, I think it's a loophole that existed in Michigan. And one of the really sickening things listening to testimony in Lansing was the open carry people act like this is the way it's always been, it's safe for everybody, open carry's never hurt anyone, they're responsible owners, and it's a bunch of crap. But they will sit there and tell you that, and that's their justification for these laws that we're asking you to act on, is that open carry didn't kill everybody, so this must be just as good. Why are we being restricted from our rights? And the bottom one, yeah, open carry with long guns, with rifles. You see the same pattern. You will hear from somebody that, I wouldn't say just the NRA, but anybody that really thinks that more guns mean less crime. A state like Connecticut has laws that they've implemented, and gun crime has gone down significantly. In a state like Missouri, in the red, where they loosened the laws like they're trying to do here in Michigan, gun crime went up, and it's been researched privately, because you can't do it at the federal level. And there are lots of different states and proofs and research that's proved the same fact. The next one. I'm not going to just go to the next one. All that slide said was that gun owners and the NRA members, they all agree with what we're saying, that we should have good background check system, bum stock should be eliminated, all those things. It's the majority of people, it doesn't matter, even Republicans. You can't see this well, but I'll explain what this is. On the left, the bullets represent 500 deaths, and those are suicides in the United States on an average year. There's, I think, 22,000, I think it says on there. And then on the right, in the gray bullets, at the top are the homicides that Phyllis mentioned. I think about 12,000 a year, 11,000. Then just below that are other cases which are unintentional, or they don't know what the cause, whether it was a homicide, suicide, or unintentional, because there's no good reporting on it. But down in the bottom, in the yellow and the red, in the red, the data that's there is that 1.2% of the deaths in America are from mass shootings. Even though we hear a lot about them, and they seem to be happening more, they are not the bulk of the deaths, gun deaths in our country. And we're spending a lot of time arguing about them and getting into power positions about them, and that's not what's killing Americans every day. And I think on the other side, another good one, how many self-defense killings there were with a gun, justified self-defense. I think it says 1.6. And though it is probably, that's not totally accurate, it's hard to determine when it was a self-defense, when it wasn't, and there are some that you don't even hear about, but it's not either a significant amount either. Yeah, I think that's the last one. Any questions? But those are the things that we're working on, and I know a lot of you are on our Facebook page. If you want to know more, we have regular meetings.
So now we're privileged with the opportunity to hear from a local leader who took time today to come and speak with us. So I'd like to introduce Sean McCann. Sean McCann's a native of Kalamazoo. He has served for 10 years on behalf of this community on the Kalamazoo City Commission. He also served as the 60th District State House Representative for 4 years. Sean's been an active member of the community. He's also been working with Voters Not Politicians to end partisan gerrymandering in the state, which is a critical issue. And he has currently announced that he is running for the 20th State Senate District. So he's here to talk with us. Please welcome.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And I'm sorry, the pillar is try to move around, make Ben follow me around a little bit. Good evening. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. And I appreciate the time that you're taking both to learn about this issue, but also a little extra time to listen to me. So I'll try to keep it brief. I feel like a guest, but I really feel like I should be one of you, and I am one of you. I'm someone who's been active in the progressive and democratic community in Kalamazoo for a long time. So I kind of regret this is the first time I've been to the group. I lost my race for state senate in 2014. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And then I kind of went back to being a private citizen for a while. And then 2016 happened, and well, here we all are, right? So one correction on the biography, I'm from Ludington, Michigan, and Detroit. So I came here to go to Western Michigan University a couple decades ago. So, and I've stayed ever since. Some people get to wear the t-shirt that says born and raised. I don't get to do that, but I like the Kalamazoo, which is came and stayed. That's my t-shirt. So, and just a little bit more about me, because that's my biography, but, and I know some of you, I know Molly, I know Jerry and Don, some of you I may not know, which I hope to get to know all of you, but so that you know who I am and why I'm here. I'm not a great orator. I wish I was. I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I've never claimed that either. I wish I were a great storyteller, but I'm not. I'm Irish, but I'm not. I didn't get the storyteller. And I'm not a master of bills. I may not know all the particular details. So if you ask me, what a particular bill does, I can't give you chapter and verse necessarily. But what I can tell you what I am and that's what I bring to you, which is that I'm a long-time, tenacious fighter. And I'm a fighter for people, and that's what I've done since I got involved in public affairs, if you will, when I became a student at Western Michigan University. So most of you are familiar with the campus on Western's campus. Anybody live in the valleys? I lived in the valleys. So when I got to Western, real quick story, there was this unpaved dirt trail that led from Valley 3 up back behind the woods by the pond there and up to the Hayworth College of Business. And what I noticed and had come to learn was that this was a dark, unpaved path that students were taking to get to their classes or to get onto campus, and it was a safety issue. And I heard about this, and for whatever reason, I don't even know all the particulars, but I got involved and got some students riled up, and we went to a meeting, and we made some noise. And that noise actually resulted in some action. Some temporary lights got strung along this dark path until Western finally came and paved it and made it an official pathway from the valley. I was energized by that, and that was really something. And that's when I got into student government, and I really got active in trying to make a better difference for the lives of students on campus. And I eventually came to be student body president. But back to being a tenacious fighter, I wasn't the establishment candidate to become the student body president. The newspaper didn't endorse me. The administration didn't really want me because I was willing to raise some noise to get things done. And even told the board of trustees that students really didn't want a tuition increase. What a crazy idea. So, and from there I went to working in the Vine neighborhood, and I worked against slumlords, and I worked to help organize neighbors so that we could make that community better. I worked at the Vine Neighborhood Association for multiple years. I got elected to the Kalamazoo City Commission, where we did things like pass a local preference policy, which was trying to keep local dollars going to local contractors. And then how many of you were involved in the Human Rights Ordinance campaign? Some of you, but that was when we made Kalamazoo a place where you could not be discriminated against if you were part of the LGBT community. We set the course for the nation. See, there's that details thing, right? I can't give you the chapter verse, but it was very meaningful. Representative John Hoadley came to Kalamazoo to help run that campaign and win that victory. So that's just to sort of tell you a little bit about what I've done. I became state representative in 2010. My district was gerrymandered, so I survived the 2010 Tea Party movement, and realized after 2011 that by 2012 the gerrymandering had been done in a big, serious way, and I see a lot of heads nodding on that, so it warms my heart. I started talking about gerrymandering in 2012, and it's amazing that it looks like it's going to get on the ballot. People are going to fight it tooth and nail. They're going to fight it in the courts. Everybody signed, so I carry my petition with me, but I knew I didn't have to in here. And then I ran for state senate, Kalamazoo County, in 2014, and it was a close race. In fact, it was the closest race really in the state of Michigan in 2014. And we were almost the bright light of a very dreary night, but just not quite enough. So I'm here to tell you that I'm your Irish scrapper. I'm willing to fight for you. I can't make the greatest, most eloquent speech, but I'm a fighter for you, and that's really important to me. So what am I now? That's kind of who I am. I'm mad. I'm mad. And this goes back a ways. I see our democracy, the one that I am passionate about and love, is broken and stolen. Broken and stolen democracy. Well, we saw a president not get elected even though they won the popular vote. But I'm talking about 2000, right? Al Gore, Florida, Secretary Harris took that, and then the U.S. Supreme Court, which was 5-4, made sure that stayed in the hands of George W. Bush, who looks kind of like a prince right now. Right? His stock's gone way up. Then a little more fast forward, I talked about the Tea Party wave. So imagine a 100-yard dash. You're going to run 2 even runners in a 100-yard dash. But then you move one of the runners about 25 yards up, and the other runner you tie to one of those rubber straps. You kind of got to run against it. And that's Citizens United and gerrymandering. That's corrupting our democracy. That's giving people an unfair advantage, and that drives me crazy. Give me a fair contest. Give Fred Upton a fair contest. Imagine what that was. I'm mad about the Supreme Court nominee that got stolen from President Obama. He had nearly a year left in his term. That, I just, don't get me going. I'm going to go with it, but I'm so very mad. Because that same court was the balance. Now we still have to think about and worry about what Justice Kennedy's going to do. You know, wouldn't it be nice if that wasn't something that we had to worry about? So now we have Trump, who also didn't win the popular vote. We have division and fear and lies and hatred and racism and all the things that we don't want. And a crazy tax proposal that's not any good for the middle class passed the House today. We've had 7 years of Republicans in charge of Lansing, which is a little closer to my experience. 7 years and roads aren't fixed, and tuition goes up at our public universities, and student debt increases, and the middle class gets smaller and smaller. We have greater disparity in wages. Flint, Betsy DeVos, in our K-12 schools not invested in, and guns. The gun presentation. This bill that you are talking about today is what you're getting out of Lansing after 7 years of one-party control through gerrymandering. So I hope and think that we've reached the lowest point, perhaps. Can we go lower than we are right now? I hope not. I'd like to think 17 showed us some positive signs in Virginia, right? We saw some good results out of Virginia, people organized there, people working hard. So maybe not, maybe 17 becomes 18. So we need some change. We need change. We need big time change. We need checks and balances, right? To come back to what our founders intended when an executive gets way out. Some checks and balances from state on up. And really, this is going to be me for the next year. We need unity among progressive people to win. When we win, then we can figure out what the policy is to some extent, if you know what I mean, right? You don't get to debate the policy at all. Your issues don't come up in Lansing. I was in Lansing for 4 years. Not a single progressive policy came up on the agenda because the majority controls the agenda. And so if we can win as progressive people, then we can have some influence on the process. So I'm wrapping up here, but do you have your phones? If you got a second, you can pull out your phone real quick. Just a quick little thing. You don't have to. Mine I got here. So calculator mode. And it's so decimal point 0.0077 times 81,000 equals. Who's got that? That's what I lost my race by. 62 votes out of 81,000 votes. 0.0007 was the difference in my race. So this, I think, is the most flippable seat across Michigan. Start here. And Kalamazoo will be the base for a lot of things, although we have the ticket. But if you want to make a gun vote matter, it can start right here. You can send a change if you're mad about this gun situation that will send a message in the next election in 18. We become the foundation. Then we want to challenge the 6th congressional district, right? And there's a good, healthy primary for that right now. If we want to win the governor's seat, if we want to keep the U.S. Senate seat. Kalamazoo is ground zero for that. You're in it. You're going to have to help pull everybody out as we get into the cycle. So, one more thing with your phones. One thing. This is calendar mode. I do this, so my phone is old and broken. All right. Calendar. Scroll ahead to November.
Next year or the
Next year. Yep. November 6th, 2018. Take that off. Take that day off your calendar right now. Because I need people to be making phone calls and knocking on doors on that day. Take the weekend off or the Monday before if you can. Can you take the weekend and 3 days, the weekend and 2 work days if you can? Maybe some weekends in October. Maybe sometime in September. I'll be knocking doors all summer, phone banking. And if you'd like to host, yes?
Say, Larry Bancher in Portage, and I helped him. He, that was his knocking doors.
Yep.
They teased and called it landslide.
Landslide, Larry.
Because he won by something like that, right? About
Yep.
16. So,
Yep.
and the same with Mike Flynn. They both won, and the key was not the posters, not, it was the knocking on the door.
Well, and it's knocking and it's talking to people, right?
Right.
Isn't that what everybody has sort of said? We need to talk about the values that are important to us. Public education, fair taxes, equal opportunity. That's what we have to go out and talk to people about in the next year if we want to see results like they had in Virginia. So please join me, and I know we're all going to work very hard to do this in the next year to make history and really send a change and say this is as low as we can stand to let our politics go. Now we're going to lift it back up. So thank you so much for having me here.